After suffering from a miscarriage, I've gotten rid of all the habits that my military husband, Nathan Linwood, despises. No longer do I ask him about his whereabouts. He can spend the night elsewhere for all I care. When I get hurt in a rescue mission, the doctor tells me to inform my family about my condition. I merely shake my head and say, I don't have any family. But Nathan still arrives at the scene half an hour later. The tall and broad-shouldered man looks at me, his voice extremely cold. Why didn't you seek me out when you got hurt? I lower my gaze. It's just a minor injury. There's no need to trouble you at all, Commander Linwood. For some reason, my nonchalant tone annoys Nathan. He's about to open his mouth when a conversation between the guards floats into our ears. Commander Linwood sure is concerned about Miss Schumann. When she twisted her ankle during a performance, Commander Linwood had a helicopter rerouted to the venue immediately. He even carried her into and out of the helicopter, refusing to let her feet touch the ground at all. Nathan's expression shifts into one of nervousness immediately. He glances at me from the corner of his eye, seemingly waiting for me to demand answers from him or kick up a fuss like usual. But my eyelashes barely flutter at the conversation. All I do is close my eyes and rest. 10 days later, I won't have anything to do with everything that's going on here. Chapter 1. After I climbed into Nathan Linwood's car, he explained slowly, those people are just spouting nonsense. I'm on official business. I invited Varen to perform for the troops, so of course, I have to take care of her now that she's injured. I hummed in response and fell silent. He abruptly snapped. Do you not believe me? Are you still mad at me? Viv, I'm focusing on our family now. What more do you want from me? I looked out the window and, without sparing him a glance, responded, I believe you. I thought I was fine, so I didn't bother you. Let's head back. My reply was as perfunctory as an automated response, prompting Nathan to slam his fist onto the steering wheel. The shrill blare of the horn shattered the silence, startling the performers who had just finished their show across the street. One of the women lifted her head and looked over. In the freezing night, she wore only a thin performance costume, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, the tip of her nose flushed red from the cold. The moment the moonlight illuminated her face, the air inside the car instantly froze. It was Veronica Schumann. Nathan instinctively looked at me. After all, every time I had seen her in the past, I would lose control of my emotions. This time, however, I merely cast an indifferent glance her way, withdrew my gaze, and remained completely unbothered. Nathan tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his gaze drifting over to her, his worry practically overflowing from his eyes. I caught on right away. I pushed the door open to get out of the car, offering him an excuse. If you need to patrol the military camp, I can walk back on my own. Before he could respond, I had already turned and walked toward the intersection. Nathan chased after me and grasped my wrist. Things ended between me and her a long time ago. I didn't know she was here either. Why don't you believe me? I nodded. I believe you. It must be difficult for a young lady to be out here on her own. Even if it's over between you two, it's only normal for you to be concerned about her. I understand. Nathan studied my face, and it didn't look like I was acting out of spite. He thought everything was completely off. I used to be an open book, and my possessiveness knew no bounds. Back then, if I spotted a single long hair on his uniform, I'd interrogate him until late into the night. Now, I was the picture-perfect, understanding partner he'd always asked for. Yet, his chest felt tight and heavy, weighed down by a suffocating dullness that wouldn't let him breathe. I broke free from his grasp, spun on my heel, and left. When I reached the corner, I stopped in my tracks and looked back. Nathan had already taken off his coat and draped it over Veronica's shoulders beside his car. Then, he cupped her face in his hands and lowered his head before kissing her deeply. I wasn't the least bit surprised, and I would never again interrogate him like a madwoman the way I had when I first found out he had cheated on me. Nathan Linwood, have you no shame? I gave myself to you when I was only 18 years old. We went from having absolutely nothing to where we are now, and you're telling me you've fallen for someone else." Blood trickled down his face from where I'd slapped him, but he merely sneered. "Do you think you have any shame? If you're so damn pure, how did you end up in my bed at 18? Even your parents abandoned you. I was the one who got you out of the orphanage and put a roof over your head for over a decade. If anything, you should be down on your knees thanking me." Those words were like a poisoned bayonet, stabbing the dozen or so years we had spent together completely to pieces. Chapter 2. Just then, my phone vibrated, pulling me out of my memories. "Major Tomlinson, I'm calling to let you know that your biological parents' personal effects have been cleared, and all survivor benefits claims have been approved. When are you available to come in and finalize the paperwork?" I pulled my cuff down, covering the scar on my wrist. 10 days from now. My divorce will be finalized in exactly 10 days. The person on the other end of the line paused for a moment before responding. "It hasn't been easy for you and Commander Linwood all these years. For your information, you don't actually have to transfer out of your original unit just to inherit the estate and honors." I stared out the window at the fleeting lights of the military barracks and answered calmly, "I don't love him anymore. All I want is to leave this place forever." When I returned home and pushed the door open, the first thing that came into view was our wedding photo hanging on the wall. The man in the photograph was beaming, with the tip of his nose affectionately nuzzling against my temple. IT had been taken when we loved each other most. Nathan and I had both grown up in the military district orphanage. When I was 18 years old, the director tried to marry me off to a violent old sergeant whose wife had passed away. Nathan was the one who took my hand and climbed over the wall to escape the compound with me. Behind us, the director yelled, "I'd see if you have what it takes to protect her for the rest of your life. Nathan." Nathan had glanced over his shoulder with an all-consuming light shining in his eyes. "In that case, I'll protect her for the rest of my life." Using the bereavement compensation his parents left behind, he rented the cheapest shack in the village and marched straight into the military recruitment office to enlist. "Once I join the army and rack up enough achievements, I'll be able to get you registered as a military spouse. When that time comes, no one can marry you off," Nathan vowed. During his first 3 years as a new recruit, he risked his neck every day in a reconnaissance company. Before heading out on any dangerous mission, he would always slip my photo into his breast pocket, right against his chest. Meanwhile, I worked a civilian desk job in the personnel office, pinching every penny of my meager salary. During our darkest days, the two of us couldn't even scrape together $10, and we shared a single bowl of instant pasta to ring in the new year. Later, he made it into Special Forces, whereas I transferred to the intelligence unit. We moved from that cheap shack into bachelor quarters and eventually into the sprawling officer quarters. The stars on his shoulders grew brighter, and the circle of comrades around him became a blur of different faces. Then came the day I found a smudge of lipstick in a shade that wasn't mine, pressed against the inner collar of his combat fatigues. A young lady twisted her ankle, so I helped her to the backstage. She must have brushed against me by accident. He yanked at his collar in frustration. "Can you stop being so damn paranoid all the time, Bibian? Does that mean you'd never betray me? Nathan Linwood. We swore to a lifetime together. Cut it short by even one day, and it's no longer forever." We began to argue endlessly. I combed through his call logs, and on the nights he claimed he had extra training, I would even sneak out to the perimeter of the training grounds, lurking in the shadows. As if out of pure spite, Nathan turned my suspicions into reality. He paraded one woman after another, and at his absolute worst, he had deliberately flaunted the scratch marks on his back just to push my buttons. "Are you happy now?" he snickered. "Didn't you want to investigate? Now you've found proof." I felt like a lunatic. I knew perfectly well that I should let go, yet I just couldn't bring myself to do it. After more than a decade, Nathan and I were woven into the very fabric of each other's flesh. To tear ourselves apart would leave us a bloody, unrecognizable mess. Yet staying together was nothing but mutual torture. However, a year ago, he suddenly changed his tune. Out of nowhere, he got rid of every woman around him, leaving only one young woman behind. I hired an investigator, but the moment I laid eyes on Veronica's photo, I completely broke down. The young woman in the picture looked just like me at 18 years old, naive and wide-eyed. It dawned on me that Nathan would rather love a ghost of my past than love the woman standing right in front of him. Consequently, I lay in the bathtub and slit my wrists that night. When Nathan broke through the door, even his fingers were trembling. He carried me in his arms as he rushed into the general hospital in the military district, his eyes terrifyingly bloodshot. "Have you lost your mind, Vivian? We can make this work, okay? I promise it's just you and me from here on out. I'll never see anyone else again." Lying in the hospital bed, I only felt exhausted, so exhausted that I couldn't even shed a tear. It was also on that very day that the Department of Defense found me and handed over a yellowed file. "Major Tomlinson, the department has re-examined the list of casualties from the Battle of Riverdale. We verified that 2 of the casualties on that list were, in fact, your biological parents." Chapter 3. With ice-cold fingertips, I held that file. After hanging up the call from the military commission, I found myself walking to the window as if possessed. Nathan held Veronica tightly in his arms in the yard downstairs. "I'm so sorry, Vivian's emotionally unstable, and she has psychological trauma. I can't leave her at a time like this. But believe me, once her condition stabilizes, I'll definitely give you a satisfactory answer." The 2 of them then kissed, as if they couldn't bear to be parted, looking just like a pair of ill-fated lovers. At that exact moment, I felt the flesh and blood that held us together being ripped apart, leaving a gaping hole behind. IT hurt so badly that I couldn't even make a sound. On the 7th day I spent lying in the hospital bed, I suddenly figured everything out. I wanted to leave Nathan and cut all of these ties myself. For 7 days straight, he didn't return to the military district family compound. I didn't ask him about it. I simply submitted my divorce application and military transfer report according to procedure and began sorting through my personal belongings. The first temporary military family housing unit we had been assigned back then had been vacant for years, so I decided to return it to the logistics office. When I arrived at the house with the logistics officer, I discovered the door was slightly ajar and the giggles of a woman and the restrained panting of a man echoed from inside. Peering through the crack in the door, I spotted Veronica's dance practice clothes scattered all over the floor. Nathan had her pinned against the wall, his camouflage pants pushed down to his knees as he thrust his hips violently. The hand he clamped tightly around the side of her waist still wore our wedding ring on its ring finger. I clenched my palm tightly, slowly let out a breath, and pulled the door shut. I then turned to the logistics officer and said, "I'm sorry, I don't think you'll be able to inspect it today. Let's do it another day." The officer was a young female personnel, and she had heard the noises from inside as well. Looking at me with a complicated gaze, she asked, "Major Tomlinson, would you like to report this to your superiors?" I shook my head. "That won't be necessary. It's a personal matter. There's no reason to bother them about it." Should I barge in there and claw at them like a madwoman, or cry like a resentful wife about the years we had fought side by side together? There was no point. A man whose heart had already wandered was nothing but an empty shell, even if I won him back. I hurried downstairs, only to be grabbed tightly by the wrist by Nathan, who had chased after me. His breathing was still uneven, his collar askew. "What are you doing here? Did you hear anything earlier?" I withdrew my hand and responded calmly. I was passing by to submit the application to return the unit. The door wasn't open, so I left. He visibly relaxed, assuming I was simply feeling sentimental from the surroundings. "I've been deployed on a field exercise all week, and I just got back today." Varen said she needed a place to train, so I just lent her my keys. Don't read too much into it. I couldn't be bothered to expose his lousy excuse and turned around to leave. All of a sudden, a loud crash of shattering glass echoed from inside the house, followed immediately by flames leaping upward. Nathan's expression changed drastically. He clamped his hand around my chin, a horrifying rage burning in his eyes. "Did you do this? I thought you'd really come around, Vivian. I didn't expect you to resort to these kinds of tactics. Let me make myself clear. I'm the one who approved Varen's temporary stay here. If anything happens to her, the military legal office will come for you first." He shoved me away, spun on his heel, and charged into the fire. Initially, I was about to leave, but I suddenly remembered. The divorce report and the notarized documents for my parents' personal effects were still locked inside the old safe in that house. Hence, I grabbed a fire extinguisher from a hallway, smashed the window, and climbed inside against the heat. Thick smoke billowed inside the house, and Nathan was rushing out with Veronica in his arms. When he spotted me, his gaze turned instantly cold. "What are you doing here?" Ignoring him, I headed straight for the bedroom. The fire had already snaked up the curtains, and the safe was right next to the burning closet. "Vivian Tomlinson, have you gone insane? Hurry up and get out," Nathan bellowed from the doorway. Yet, I threw myself in front of the safe and spun the combination lock. The moment the safe door sprang open, the burning chandelier above me crashed down. Nathan instinctively shielded Veronica beneath his body and retreated. I, on the other hand, was knocked over by the blast. Shards of glass cut into my skin, and blood instantly soaked through my clothes. Gritting my teeth, I yanked out the document envelope and protected it tightly against my chest. Chapter 4. Thick smoke choked my lungs, and my vision gradually blurred. Before my consciousness sank into darkness, the last things I heard were the footsteps of Nathan rushing out while carrying Veronica and the faint sound of sirens approaching from the distance. When I came to, I was already lying in a ward at the Military General Hospital. Nathan was opening the document envelope I had risked my life to protect. Inside were sheets of paper. "Our marriage certificates. You almost got yourself killed for these?" His voice tightened. "Vivian, your left leg is fractured. Your lungs are shredded from the smoke, and we almost lost you on the table." I reached out and took the envelope back. We were both in the military. Without our marriage certificates, how was I supposed to submit a divorce report to the Army's political department? Nathan's forehead creased as he watched me clutch the document envelope. The three of us would have made it out perfectly fine, but you just had to force this absurd ultimatum on me just to see who I'd pick first. "Arson is a severe disciplinary infraction, Vivian. I saved Varen first because she was completely defenseless while you've had survival training." I stared at the ceiling and hummed in response. "Viv." His tone softened as he attempted to explain himself. "Since I've already decided to focus on our family, I won't have any further involvement with Veronica. Varen, her family's going through a hard time, so I'm merely providing some assistance through official channels, arranging a place for her to stay temporarily." Veronica was having a hard time, so he helped her all the way to the bedroom. He talked a big game about focusing on our family, yet his body was completely enthralled by a younger, fresher piece of meat. At long last, I lifted my gaze to look at him. My eyes were as still as a lake, utterly calm, and without the slightest ripple. "I know. I understand." He was driven mad by my calmness. He shot to his feet, only for his gaze to catch the large burn scars on my arm. "Vivian, was one scar not enough? Are you going to use even more injuries to tie me down?" "This won't happen again. I won't do anything so foolish anymore." He wanted to say something else, but his encrypted communicator rang. He hurried to the window to answer it. I couldn't hear the contents clearly. I only faintly caught the sound of Veronica's emotional voice. Nathan comforted her in a soft voice before turning to look at me. "There's an urgent matter with the exercise review. I have to go to headquarters. So, you focus on recovering from your injuries." With that, he turned and left. In the days that followed, I stayed quietly in the military hospital. Nathan had his men send over nutritional supplements and fresh flowers, and the internal line rang every day. I always had the nurse on duty answer it, instructing her to only say, "Her condition is stable, so you don't have to visit her." On the day I was discharged, I went to settle the bill alone on crutches. I had just handed over my documents when an old woman shoved me aside. "My son-in-law is one of the leaders here. Let me handle mine first." I frowned. "Please wait in line." The elderly woman shot me a look. "Which department are you from?" "My son-in-law is Major General Linwood. If you delay me from getting my medicine, can you afford the consequences?" As soon as her words fell, Nathan had already rushed over from the other end of the corridor with Veronica. He pulled me aside and lowered his voice. "Varen's mother has a heart condition. She can't get worked up if you're a soldier. It's only right for you to give way to a civilian." Veronica supported Mrs. Schumann, who was wheezing, and with teary eyes, she apologized. "I'm so sorry, Vivian. My mother's old illness flared up, and I was afraid she wouldn't agree to take the expensive medicine, so I told her Nathan's my boyfriend. Please don't hold it against him. He's just a softie who can't bear to see an old woman suffer." I wordlessly drank in the sight of the three people in front of me, S.O., because Mrs. Schumann had fallen ill. He had left me alone in the hospital with a fractured leg and burn injuries. Forget it. None of it mattered anymore. I nodded and turned to leave. I had only taken 2 steps when I heard Veronica's tearful whisper. "Nathan, is Vivian mad? Will she pull another one of her stunts again? I don't want to ruin your future." Nathan's voice was featherlight, yet it still reached me clearly. "Don't overthink it. She grew up without parents, so she can't understand how you feel." My fingers tightened around my crutch until my knuckles turned white as I took one step after another down the long hospital corridor. Nathan's footsteps approached from behind me. "I'll take you back to the compound, Vivian." Chapter 5. I didn't look back. In fact, I quickened my pace. All of a sudden, my crutch slipped, and I pitched forward, crashing to the floor. The burn on my arm started bleeding again. The fall was too hard. It felt as if something in my chest had shattered completely. I clenched my teeth, digging my fingernails into my palms, but the waterworks began to spite myself. Growing up, I dreaded holidays the most. When I watched the warm light spill out of other people's windows and heard the laughter echoing from inside, envy hacked away at my flesh like a dull knife. Nathan knew better than anyone that this was my most painful scar. Yet, just to comfort Veronica, he tore that scar open again and again with his own hands. He rushed over and scooped me up, anger straining his voice. "Why do you have to be so goddamn obstinate, Vivian?" As soon as his words fell, a thermos came flying through the air. In the blink of an eye, scalding soup splashed all over my face, and my forehead rapidly swelled up, turning black and blue. Mrs. Schumann stood a few paces away, trembling with rage. "How dare you seduce my son-in-law, you shameless wench? Take that!" Charging forward, she slapped me. I was struck so hard my head twisted to the side, and I fell on the ground. Immediately after, my crutch came crashing down onto my shoulder, and my bone emitted a dull thud upon the impact. Nathan caught Mrs. Schumann's crutch as she swung it down again. "Please calm down, Mrs. Schumann. You've gotten the wrong idea." "What's going on then?" Mrs. Schumann snarled. "This vixen threw herself into your arms. Do you think I'm blind?" Pushing myself up from the ground, I snapped, "You need to keep your daughter on a leash. We both know who the real homewrecker is here." Nathan whipped his head around, his voice dropping to a whisper that only the two of us could hear. "She has severe coronary heart disease. She can't be triggered. Vivian, I'm begging you. Don't make a scene right now." Right after saying that, he supported Mrs. Schumann. "You've got it all wrong. Major Tomlinson is my comrade. She's dealing with severe trauma from a deployment, so her emotions are quite unstable right now." He even pulled out pages of my medical records from his pocket. Mrs. Schumann took one look at it and spat out, So, she joined the army and went nuts? No wonder her parents died early. Clearly, no one was around to teach her any manners. Without sparing me another glance, Nathan guided her away. I sat on the floor, watching their retreating figures, unable to shed a single tear anymore. The kind-hearted head nurse helped me back into the treatment room to rebandage my wounds. "Major Tomlinson, do you need me to notify security?" she asked cautiously. I shook my head. "That won't be necessary. Please discharge me." After returning to the military residential compound, I began packing my suitcase. My phone vibrated, and the screen lit up. Veronica had posted an update. In the photo, she wore Nathan's military uniform jacket and leaned against his chest. The caption read, "Finding you amid the smoke and gunfire was worth all the pain." I calmly swiped across the screen and clicked unfollow. Downstairs, the car the guard had called for me had already arrived. I got in and gave the driver my destination, the military airport. The car started and drove out of the compound gates. Just then, a black military jeep approached from the opposite direction and cruised past us. Through the half-lowered rear window, I caught Nathan turning his head to talk to the person beside him. Veronica was nestled against his shoulder, absolutely beaming. The two vehicles sped off in opposite directions. In the rear-view mirror, the gates of the military compound grew further and further away until they finally shrank into a tiny speck. When I was 18 years old, I climbed over the orphanage wall with Nathan. When I was 20 years old, I stood beside him on the recruit oath platform. When I was 22 years old, we exchanged wedding rings in the auditorium. Then, when I was 28 years old, I watched one woman after another appear by his side. The images flashed before my eyes in a deafening blur and vanished into the distance behind me. I thought to myself, "We're done, Nathan." I was about to go to the stretch of blue sky my parents had guarded until their final moments, and I would never come back.